Well, it's Wednesday. Glad to see everybody here tonight as we continue our Bible study here on Wednesday. We're going to continue in the Sermon on the Mount. That's where we're going to be and go through what Christ had to say on that. So we'll be there next few weeks. We'll begin the word of prayer. And John Ross, would you lead some prayer, please? Last week we completed the Beatitudes. And as we said, if you did the first 8, number 9 was going to be very close behind. That would be persecution. There would be those who would persecute you because you're trying to live the way that Christ laid out there in the first 8 Beatitudes. Now, if you live these Beatitudes, if you live the 9 of them, there's also going to be some effects from that, what others will see about you. And that's where we start tonight in Matthew 5, verse 13. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? It is then good for nothing but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. We'll end right there. So if you're going to practice these Beatitudes, you're going to be the salt of the earth. You're going to make life worth living. You're going to give light to the world. People will look at your life and realize that that's the life that I want. You would hope they would say that if you live these things. But you're going to be salt of the earth. You're going to be well seasoned. You're going to have an effect on others. That's what will happen. We think about salt. Salt in Bible times was different from the salt that we have today. Today, the salt that we have is pure salt. It's purified. It's gone through all the process that salt can go through, and it comes out 99.9% pure. But in Bible times, they didn't have all the ways of purifying it. And you might have salt that would have some impurities in it, and it wouldn't last as long as the salt we have today. So there might be a little bit of, dirt in there or some kind of other substance. And over time, that impurity would maybe overtake the purity of the salt and it would lose its flavor. It wouldn't be worth using. So therefore, you simply just go and you throw it out. Throw it out in the street. So there's the difference we might think today. I never known of any salt to ever go bad just by sitting on a shelf. But in Bible times, it very well could happen if not used properly or quick enough. Now, salt is something that we all use. It takes something that's unsavory and it gives it taste, meat, vegetables. All it's good, and we've all have eaten foods before that's needed more salt, and we put salt on it. Sometimes maybe you've eaten food that has too much salt, and you can't stand it. You got to put it aside. So not enough makes a difference. Too much makes a difference. So there's got to be that proper balance in one's life when it comes to being the salt here that Christ is speaking about if we're going to give flavor to others. If we don't have enough, we're going to do some harm. Saying one thing and doing another, saying one way and living another way. I'm a Christian, but when we look at your life that you're living, you're not living the Christian life. And on the other extreme, have you ever been around somebody that all they wanted to talk about was Bible, Jesus, or God? That's all they want to talk about. Well, that too can be too much. It can turn a person off. And we got to have a balance as well of what we know in life, things that are going on in the world, and talk about those as well. So there's got to be a balance there. having the right amount of salt so we can have the right effect upon others. Salt preserves us from corruption, is what it does. It preserves food. Remember, if you go back into the hog killing days, November or so, you have a cold spell, you kill a pig, and you put the ham in a box and you fill it full of salt. And you hope it stayed cold enough, long enough to preserve the ham, what you want it to do. Well, it preserves things, and that's what Christ does. He preserves us when we are living in a correct way. It preserves us from sin. It keeps sin out of our life if we have the proper amount of salt. So the spiritual salt here that Christ is speaking about, it gives the Christian life flavor. And it makes, we live the right life, and it gives us flavor. In Colossians 4 and verse 6, let your speech always be with grace, seasoned with salt, that you may know how you ought to answer each one. So our speech is to be seasoned properly, seasoned with salt. Know how to answer, know the right tone to use, because it's going to make a difference when we have questions or whatever, ask questions, or questions are asked to us, that we'll know how to answer that. Make sure that it's seasoned with salt. So there's the salt part of this sermon that he's given. Make sure that you're properly seasoned. People will take notice. He then, back to Matthew 5, 14 through 16, you are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do they light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. So if we are the proper Christian example, people are going to take notice. They're going to look at it. You can't hide it. If you're living properly, people will take notice of your Christian life that you're living. And there's no better advertisement for a Christian or for Christ than a Christian living the right life. That's a great advertisement. That's a billboard right there, showing how you live. We never know how much influence that will have on somebody else. We won't have the proper influence, but we never know how much. And it may very well be the influence that leads them to want to seek out being a Christian and living a Christian life. So when one speaks well of a faithful Christian, they're speaking well of God, because you're following God, speaking well of Him. We don't do it to be seen. It's just something that we do, and we will be seen. If you're trying to do these things, living a Christian life just to be seen, you're going about it all wrong. You're following in line with the Pharisees. They would do things just to be seen, and yet inside they're full of corruption. We want to do things because it's the right thing to do, and if you do that, you will be seen. You will be noticed. People will notice what you're doing. You don't want to hide it. You can't hide it. You don't want to put it under a bushel. You don't do that. Again, for the Christian to live the proper life, it's just like a city on a hill. You're not going to hide it. It's going to be seen. Christ many times referenced himself as being a light. John 8:12. And Jesus spoke to them again, saying, I am the light of the world. He who follows me shall not walk in darkness, but have the light of life. Then in 9:5, as long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. So Christ referenced himself as being a light, or the light, and he expects us to do the same thing, to be that light that others take notice about as to what it is to be a Christian. We got to be that light. Now, verse 17 and 18, by this time, Christ has a large audience. He's on this side of the mountain. He's teaching. And people are thinking, well, this is different. I never heard this before. I never heard it explained like this. And I begin to ask, what about these new teachings? Is he bringing in a new law? What about the old law that we're living under now, there's a lot of questions that people were probably having, wondering about this teaching that Christ is bringing about. And here Christ says to them, 17 and 18, "Do not think that I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For surely I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, one jot or one tittle will by no means pass from the law till all is fulfilled." So he tells them, they're getting so maybe concerned. What about the law? He says, I'm not going to destroy it. I'm going to fulfill it. And everything about the Old Testament is pointing to Christ, what he's going to do, how he's going to fulfill it, what to expect, things of that nature. And he said, I'm going to fulfill that. Like you can't destroy it. He couldn't destroy it. If he did, he couldn't fulfill it. So he's going to live under it and going to fulfill it. And, of course, bring about the new law that's going to be able to forgive sins, take away sins. But he's not going to destroy it, not one bit will he do that. So there's a lot of different listeners in the crowd that are listening to him. So some wanting to know, is he going to destroy it? He says, no, I'm going to fulfill it. There might be some there who are thinking, is he going to start a revolution and overthrow this Roman government? And he's saying, no, I bring peace. We'll have a new kingdom, spiritual. And probably some there are wanting to know, is he going to expose our hypocrisy? And there may have been some Pharisees there that were listening to him, and they were getting a little bit nervous. Is he going to expose what we're all about here? And the answer would be yes. That's what he's going to do. And he's fixing to start doing that. But here Christ is giving them assurance. I'm going to fulfill this law. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring it about. I'm going to fulfill it. And that's what Galatians 3:24 and 25 talks about. Therefore, the law was our tutor to bring us to Christ, that we might be justified by faith. But after faith has come, we are no longer under a tutor. So the Old Testament is used here as a tutor, somebody that teaches, instructs, to show that there's something better coming. Who is coming, and that would be Christ. So without the old law, we wouldn't know about sin. Without the old law, we wouldn't know even how to recognize Christ. So all that the old law speaks about is bringing us to understand who Christ is. Back to Matthew 5:17 and 18. Verse 18, he says, I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, one jot or one tittle will by no means pass from the law till it's all fulfilled. Now, when we think about, if I were to say, give me a verse that speaks of the Lord's second coming, or a verse that tells that the earth's going to be destroyed one day. Give me a verse. We all would go to the New Testament and think of verses there. But the Old Testament spoke of destruction as well of the earth one day, a judgment that's going to come one day. It speaks of that also. So it's not just New Testament says this, but also the Old. And Psalms 102, 25 and 26 says, of old you laid the foundation of the earth, and the heavens are the work of your hands. They will perish, but you will endure. They will all grow like an old garment. Like a cloak, you will change them, and they will be changed. And also those verses there of Isaiah, they're all talking about the end of time, the end of the earth, when everything is going to be destroyed and taken out. So when Christ here speaks about, he says, this world's going to be until all these fulfillments I'm speaking of happen. And when they are fulfilled, then you can say, well, time could come in at any time. So he fulfilled all those. Now that he's laid that foundation, and he's told them, I've come to fulfill the law. Now he's going to begin to start talking about the law, the true meaning of it. And 19 and 20 is where he begins with that. Whoever therefore breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches men so shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever does and teaches them shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I say to you that unless your righteousness exceeds the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. Many took the law and they began to twist it, these Pharisees, the scribes. They would twist it around and they would add to it and they would take away from it. And they made it so difficult that you couldn't live it. That's the problem that the Pharisees did with the Old Testament law in many cases. So difficult, you couldn't live it. Now what Christ is going to do is saying here, if you do that, you're going to be least in the kingdom. You don't want to do that. Teach it the way that God meant for it to be taught. But he says there in verse 20, now your righteousness now has got to it's got to be greater, exceed the scribes and Pharisees. Now, we think about the scribes and Pharisees in the Bible. Now, there were those that had a bad reputation. But not all of them were that way. These men were, for the most part, they were godly men. They loved the Lord. They loved people. And many tried their very best to live in the proper way. But you had some that would take the law and begin to twist it and make it say things and add to it, take away from it. And that's who he's speaking of right here in verse 20. Your righteousness has got to exceed these scribes and Pharisees. And a person might think, well, how could I be more righteous than a scribe or a Pharisee? Well, that's what their thinking is. And Christ is about to show them, here's how you do it. Here's how you go about being a more righteous person than they are. Because remember, the Pharisees were more concerned with the external than the internal. They wanted to look right, but inside they weren't right. They wanted to appear perfect, but on the inside they were full of dead men, bones, and corruption and things like that. And that's what Christ is fixing to expose, their hypocrisy. And he begins in verse 21, and you have heard it said to those of old, you shall not murder. And whoever murders will be in danger of judgment. But I say to you that whoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of judgment. Whoever says to his brother, Reka, shall be in danger of the council. But whoever says, you fool, shall be in danger of hellfire. So here's the commandment, one of the original 10 commandments. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not murder. Now the Pharisees taught, as long as you didn't kill somebody, you're okay. But you can call them every name in the book. And that's still okay. Just don't kill them. You can cuss them out. Just don't kill them. You can say to them, I wish you were dead. But just don't kill them. That's how they were taking this. As long as I don't murder somebody, I'm all right. But I can go about and call them anything I want to, and the Lord will overlook that. Well, Christ gives the real meaning of this. Yeah, it's wrong to murder. It's wrong to kill, to murder someone. But at the same time, it's wrong to get out here and call them mean names and say things about them that are, that you would not say otherwise. That's wrong too. Watch your anger, he says. If you don't watch your anger and keep your anger under control here, then it's going to cause trouble. It's going to lead to murder. It's what it's going to do. In most cases, when a person is murdered, there's anger behind it. Not every time. Sometimes people are killed and for various reasons, but most of the time when a person is murdered, somebody's angry. And the anger got out of control. Christ is saying here, keep that anger under control, and you won't have to worry about murder, killing. But they thought it was okay. It's okay to be angry at your brother, mad enough at him that you could kill him, but just don't kill him. Just don't do that, and you'll be okay. That's why he calls the word reka there. That reka is words that can destroy a person. You can kill a person in many ways. You can take their life, or you can destroy them with words. It's just you can do that. That's what the word reka means. It's when you call somebody vain or empty or worthless. You're the most worthless human being I've ever seen. That's wrong. Don't do that. And he talks about calling a person a fool. People of the Bible that were called fools were idolaters. They practiced idolatry. They were fools. Or an individual who denied the existence of God. That would be a fool. Psalms 14:1. The fool has said in his heart there is no God. God calls him a fool. So don't go out here and just be using that word in a very slight way. Don't do that. Let God call people fools who are fools. Let him do that. And if a person denies the existence of God, you can look at the Bible and say, well, God called him a fool. Here's what God says about him. So therefore, something like that is where he's going with. So it's more than just killing somebody, Christ is saying here. Don't hate your brother. Don't hate anybody. Don't let that anger turn into something more, and you'll have a great regret for that. If you have an issue with your brother, here's what he says about verse 23 and 24. Therefore, if you bring your gift to the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go your way. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. So if you have a problem with someone, your brother or your sister, go to them and work that thing out. That's the way to do it. But some folks, they don't want to be at peace. They want to let this thing fester. They want to always have it there that they can bring it up against this person. And then that turns to anger. And who knows where that anger will go. But here's the solution. If you want peace, you go to that person and you work it out. It's probably just a misunderstanding, probably some words that were said that were taken the wrong way. But people don't always want to do that. They don't want to do it. I've told many, you need to do it the Bible way. You go and you do it the biblical way here and you work it out. But they won't do it. Don't want to do what God says to do to work out a problem. They don't want peace, I reckon. But you can't come to worship if you got something against the person you're sitting beside. If you have anger problems or hate issues, it's going to be difficult to worship because your mind's going to be on that person and not focused on God. Get it worked out, is what he's saying. He continues his thought of anger in verse 25 and 26. Agree with your adversary quickly while you're on the way with him, lest your adversary deliver you to the judge, and the judge hand you over to the officer, and you be thrown into prison. Surely I say to you, you will by no means get out of there till you have paid the last penny. So if you got a problem here, and he's talking about a financial thing here, you best work that thing out. You may be in the wrong. If this person here is in the wrong, you go to that person and work it out. If you take it to court, you may lose every penny you got. It may happen to you. You go to him, keep it out of court. You go to him, and you may work this thing out, and it'd be the best for both individuals. So try that, he says. Be at peace with your neighbor. So that sort of falls under the commandment, love your neighbor as yourself. And so he covers several things there when it comes to anger. Do not murder. Okay, I'm not going to murder somebody. Well, don't be angry at them either. Don't hate them. There's a lot more to that than just do not kill. Next, he goes in verse 27. You have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you, whoever looks at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. So the Pharisees look at this, the commandment there, the 10 Commandments, do not commit adultery. Let's say, okay, don't commit the act. But I can do everything else. As long as I don't commit the act, I'm okay. I can lust. That's what their thinking is. I can lust. I can watch pornography. Pretty popular today. As long as I don't commit the act, I'm okay. I can tell dirty jokes. I can flirt. I can go almost to the edge of that flirting. And it'll be okay because I didn't commit the act. That's not what Christ is saying here. Yeah, don't commit the act. But don't even go in that direction that could bring about adultery. Stay away from it. Stay away from it. It's what he's telling them here. Because this lust can turn into something greater that can destroy the marriage and destroy the family. It can all do that. That flirting, it can start and destroy. Stay away from it. And that's what Christ is meaning right here. Stay away from it. It's more than just the act. It's the things that lead up to it. Stay away from it. In verse 29 and 30, he talks about, which is tying this together. If your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out, cast it from you. In verse 30, if your hand causes you to sin, cut it off, get rid of it, cast it from you. That behavior that could lead to the adultery, stop it. Don't even let it. If it's there, get rid of it. But most folks want to, punt it. I give myself a little tap on the wrist. Don't do that anymore. Won't work. Some want to cut it off, almost. Maybe just a little muscle, ligament holding it on to the hand. No, he said cut it off. Okay, I'll cut it off. I'm going to put it in my pocket. I'm going to keep it there close. No, he said cast it away. Every aspect of this is that could cause one to sin. Get rid of it. Don't have it around. It's not worth your salvation. It's not worth spending an eternity in hell. None of it's worth that. But people want to, again, not take sin seriously and flirt with it and not get rid of it. Got to get rid of it. And then in verse 31 and 32, furthermore, it has been said, whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce. But I say to you, whoever divorces his wife for any reason except sexual immorality causes her to commit adultery, and whoever marries a woman who is divorced commits adultery. Here's what the lust can run into. It can bring about sexual immorality, of course. And of course, the Jewish individuals here, they would divorce pretty much for any reason. The men would. They would try to find reasons. But Christ says, nope. Let me tell you, Matthew 19, he covers more of this. But let me go back to what it's about, he says. Tell you what it's about. You don't divorce except for sexual immorality. If one has been unfaithful, that's the only reason that God will accept. Scriptural reason for divorce. But the Pharisees said you can divorce for any reason. And they did have any reason for that. One reason, if you saw a woman that was more beautiful than your wife, you could divorce her. That sounds pretty odd, but they had that for a reason. And Josephus, he's often quoted. He was a Jewish scholar. He divorced his wife. And he didn't go into details, but he wasn't pleased with her manners. I don't know what her bad manners were. He divorced his wife for bad manners. Did she smack when she ate? I don't know. That's a bad manner. I don't know what it was. She didn't brush her hair in the morning? I don't know. But he divorced her. Got somebody else. Reckon. But the word sexual immorality here, the King James has it better, fornication. Sexual immorality covers a lot of ground. And a lot of people try to use that to say, my mate has been unfaithful. But it means fornication, the physical, sexual relationship outside the marriage, the way he's speaking about. Sexual immorality can cover a lot of things. It can cover pornography. It can cover a bad joke. It can cover flirting. It can cover a lot of stuff. But the real word that Christ is using is fornication. I mean, the sexual act outside the marriage. That's the only reason that God will accept for a divorce. So he covers that. So it's about more than just do not commit adultery. It's about a lot of other things. He includes them here. So we don't want to go the way of the Pharisee and say, just don't commit adultery. Do everything else, you're all right. No, Christ ties it down here. A lot of stuff you don't want to mess with when it comes to the faithfulness between you and your spouse. We'll continue next week. We'll take up, he covers a lot of them. A lot of these commands that how the Pharisees had twisted and turned into something else. And Christ covers those and gives the proper meaning of what God meant when he gave those commands in the Old Testament, Exodus chapter 20. Anything on our lesson tonight? All right, we'll pick up in verse 33 next week and go from there.